And we're live. And to answer the chat really quickly, no, this is not another taped premiere with live commentary by the writers and producers. We are actually here. And
What
that's
does
how I
that mean?
magically
What does that
pulled
mean?
that comment up.
What does that mean?
Well, remember we did the premiere of those shorts where you and I hung out in the chat and talked to people in the chat? We may do that with some other stuff, but right now, this is live stream. We're live.
Is this a show now? We're in a show?
We are officially.
Oh, okay.
Not only are we in a show, but
confused.
we're in two different places.
I'm confused.
So we are both on the brand new America's Untold Stories channel and also on the Eric Hunley channel, where we will be on the Eric Hunley channel for 15 minutes. I'm trying to encourage folks to come over from Eric Hunley to here. Not everybody necessarily knows that there's a new show. They don't get the memo, things like that. And I've got, 23,000 people on the Eric Hunley channel.
What?
I'm willing to bet that potentially a few thousand may be very interested in what we're doing here. So I really, really look forward to seeing everybody. In the top of the chat, there's a pinned comment. Please go and click that. Come over, watch the whole show. It's also in the description. Later on, I'll put in a pinned comment. I can't do a pinned comment ahead of time because I can't comment on a video that didn't happen yet.
Oh.
And I'll probably do this one more time next week, but then I'll stop doing that and just assume the two channels are on their own. So now for today we have a bit of a shift, which is cool. We've been really, really heavy on the history part, CIA and RFK and things like that. And now we're shifting to your other profession, a little bit of rock and roll.
A little bit of rock and roll.
And you have a little bit of history in that. Didn't you work for this small organization here?
Well, I didn't work for them. I created my own company. If I worked for them, I probably would have blown my brains out by now. But I created, when I was at National Lampoon as an editor, I got a call on the phone one day, and it was from Bob Cosberg, who was one of the, Bob Friedman, who was one of the vice presidents of MTV. I thought somebody was jerking me around. And he said, would you like to start a magazine for us? We'll give you unlimited money and you can hire all your friends. So I thought it was a prank. Of course, it turned out not to be a prank. The money that MTV was talking about came from Bertelsmann Music Group, BMG, and MTV supplied their logo. I supplied the cover artists and the magazine, which we ran for about 2 years. It kind of mirrored the network. So there were sections like Yo MTV Raps and MTV News, and a lot of the on-air people actually did the columns, like Kurt Loder wrote for me. All of the people, Ted Demme, the late Ted Demme, Jonathan Demme's nephew, wrote a column for Yo MTV Raps, and we tried to mirror the network. That was the original business model, and it worked successfully. We had over nearly 500,000 subscribers in no time. And anyways, the reason I mention that is because I've always been involved in rock and roll. Going back to, I went to both Woodstocks. I don't know if a lot of people could say that. I went to the first one and the second one. I was at Watkins Glen. I was at the concert for Bangladesh. I saw Jimi Hendrix play with the band of Gypsies at the Fillmore East on New Year's Eve with Buddy Miles and Billy Cox. And I saw Joplin at her heyday, Sly and the Family Stone, basically everybody, and wrote about it. Even in my high school newspaper, I remember doing a music review of Leon Russell. I remember being at the Nassau Coliseum the night Pigpen died, with the Grateful Dead playing there. Again, it fits into this Forrest Gump thing where I was at every famous rock concert in history simply by chance. I was very young. I don't know how I stumbled into this. When I went to the first Woodstock, we rode on the back of a guy's car who was two local kids who had an old car, and we went in through back roads. We were staying up in the Catskills for the summer, and these two local brothers knew all the back roads into the festival grounds, and that's how we got into the first Woodstock. Anyway, I don't remember seeing anybody playing because we were in the woods, but I took the sign off the tree that said festival. I had the presence of mind to steal the sign.
Oh, wow.
So
Amazing.
I had that taken down. But anyway, the point of the matter is, my father was a big band jazz drummer who drummed with Dorsey and Sinatra, had his own jazz trio. Later on opened up for and actually backed up Lenny Bruce, but we're going to get into that with the Lenny Bruce episode at a later date.
Perfect. Now, for today, to stay on track, and I'll confess, and of course I gave you a little bit of grief because of my thumbnail of who is Elliott Smith, and
Right.
in your crowd that was pretty insulting, and I've got a picture actually later I'll share on that would cover some of the flack you're getting. But to quickly blow through just a little bit, I put together this little preview. We'll watch a little bit of it, and just give an idea of who is he? Why do we care?
Right. A lot of people don't know who he is, but here's a montage you put together. That's great.
From Good Will Hunting, Miss Misery, music and lyrics by Elliott Smith.
Now, this is him at the Oscars.
This is him opening up the Oscars before a billion people.
Johnny Walker.
An Academy Award nominated singer-songwriter. His acclaimed new CD, I have it right here, is called Figure Eight. Here's Elliott Smith.
Eight is the brand new album from my next guest, and on May 17th, he'll start a 3-night run at Irving Plaza right here in New York City. Please welcome back to the show, Elliott Smith.
The thing is, his songs are not funny. You know, they're
He's
pretty
majorly
sincere.
influential
Elliott Smith
on everybody. It appears kind of like I'll draw the parallel in my mind, kind of like the Velvet Underground. What was the old joke about them that not many people bought their album, but everyone who did started a band?
That might be true. I mean, there's been so many people that they have said is the next Bob Dylan. It was becoming cliche after many, many years. But if anybody really could have been, it was Elliott Smith being the singer-songwriter. Here's Bob.
And there you go. See, it looks just like him.
Blonde Bob. It's masked and anonymous Bob at Sundance. But the guy who came closest, unfortunately, because we don't know, he died at such a young age, and we don't know what would have happened, but was Elliott Smith in relation to being a singer-songwriter and a solo artist, and also playing with bands. He started with a band, a grunge punk band up in Portland called Heat Miser. That was a loud rock and roll band. So not unlike Bob, he comes from the world of rock and roll and later became a solo artist.
He and Jeff Buckley might be the two biggest.
Everybody talks about Jeff Buckley, but Buckley didn't have a rock band. I mean, Buckley
didn't play 5 instruments.
Didn't play 5 instruments. You know, I mean, he didn't have songs where he opened up the Oscars for Good Will Hunting. I mean, everybody always mentions Jeff Buckley for some reason, but the closest comparison would be, I guess, if Dylan died at the age of 32. You know what I mean? That would be as close as you could get. I mean, the idea that this guy was a voice of his generation, I think, is very accurate. Elliott Smith.
Wow, amazing. Well, and since you've kind of seen both, I will defer to your
I came to Elliott Smith very
age.
late. I to be honest, I came to the scene very late. His late 90s thing was based in Portland, and then he moved to New York, and I think a lot of it, his career was overshadowed by 9/11. You know, he got into a lot of drugs and disappeared for a number of years there. So his career was kind of melting down. I found it out posthumously, like a lot of other people.
Awesome. So let's go ahead and I guess you'll take us through the story, and that's probably where you start, right?
Yeah, this is him with his mother, Bunny Welch. His father divorces the mother. They're from Omaha, Nebraska. She is a beauty queen type, and the father becomes a psychiatrist, moves to Portland, Oregon. She moves to Dallas, Texas from Omaha, and is a single mom working odd jobs trying to raise him at this point. So she's looking for a husband. And this is the mom teaching him piano. He was a child prodigy, learned how to play piano, obviously, at a very young age, and started to have rock bands at a very young age also in high school. But he also was eclectic. He played football. He was into sports. He was, raised in the Dallas area. So that was, part of Texas culture.
And then I'm guessing he stayed close to his mom throughout.
Yeah, it really becomes part of his legacy because he is abused by the stepfather almost from day one, a guy named Charlie Welch. And this apparently traumatizes him, and he feels that he's the protector of his mother. Here he is at the wedding. On the right is Charlie Welch. The mother looks like a movie star, and according to his friends, he was beaten literally the first day of the wedding by this guy.
Jeez.
The first day of the wedding, yeah. And he's haunted by this abuse. This is Charlie Welch hovering over him while he's playing piano. Charlie Welch was an insurance salesman, and he was the protector of his mother, as a young boy would be, at that age. And then the stepfather comes in, and of course the attention and focus is taken off of you. But the trauma comes from the beatings by Charlie Welch of Elliott Smith, who eventually flees to Portland, Oregon at the age of 14 to be with his father. And his father is a psychiatrist, I believe to this day, in Portland, Oregon.
Wow. Now, you mentioned, he was, from everything I've seen, and it's like hearing the same thing over and over and over and over. It's weird. There's like one script out there about Elliott Smith, and I was, doing research. It's like, I've heard this before, almost word for word. But as a kid, he was obviously influenced. I think you said this is his first album.
Right, but not an influence. Not really for influence. The influences were really the Beatles and Led Zeppelin and mainstream rock. This was just the first album that he bought. His influences were more the Beatles, I would say. In fact, I remember asking Ringo one time what he thought of Elliott Smith, and he said he obviously listened to a lot of our music, which was kind of funny. And true. He eventually did record at Abbey Road Studios years later, Elliott.
It's funny you said that. There were some people who, when I was listening, kind of talking about the influences, they were saying that he somehow took like elements of the Beatles, elements of Dylan, and he somehow made them work.
Yeah, Simon Garfunkel, the harmonies, playing multi-instrumental tracks himself, playing all the instruments himself. Yeah, he was able to do that. He'd used other guys. Obviously, he had a band and toured with bands. But on the albums, a lot of times he would play the drums and then play piano and then play guitar and then sing and do the whole thing himself,
Okay, so now as a kid, he's growing up. Obviously, we're not going to spend a lot of time here.
Right.
What next?
Portland, 94, I think he gets into a solo act and begins to attract attention just by audio cassette tapes. And nobody knows what's going on in Portland. This is clearly just a Portland scene. He comes down to LA to do a showcase, and in 1995, the first album is called Elliott Smith, and he plays some showcases down here, attracts major management and record labels when he comes down here, and that becomes the end of almost of an era of the Portland scene. He is a homegrown hero up in Portland. He's giving shows where you could hear a pin drop in usually raucous nightclubs simply because they're listening to his songs, and it's such a low key audio situation that you don't even hear the clinking of glasses. But when he comes down to LA, that's really where his career really begins to explode.
Okay, now he was with Heat Miser or something like that in Massachusetts when he went to school, and then Portland and LA.
Heat Miser is a band that he put together, and when he went to school, he went to Hampshire College and returned to Portland to form Heat Miser in Portland. But he had made a lot of friends when he was in Hampshire, which was kind of an experimental school, not unlike the one I went to, which was Bard. It's one of the Seven Sisters, I think. Franconia, Hampshire, Bennington, Goddard was one. Vassar was another one. Bard was another one. All unstructured, insane schools where you could do whatever you want, which is what I did and what he did, apparently. But then he comes back and starts playing solo gigs in '94 in Portland.
Yeah, no, from my understanding, it was almost accidental. Like, he was doing the stuff with the band, but he just had ideas and he threw them down on a 4-track recorder.
Right.
And that was the whole reason, not the whole reason, but it was something that kind of made him stand apart, almost like the anti-grunge, right? At the time, where he was playing very melodic things, but it was almost low production quality, but it was fascinating to people, and people were kind of drawn into.
Right. I think he was just tired of being in a loud grunge band and wanted to focus on his own music. And I think, like any other band, they fought over songs. They fought over who would take solos. They fought over everything, which is typical of these types of situations that have multiple talented people in them. So he spun it off into these solo tapes that he recorded in basements and things like that.
All right, so now before we go on, I'm going to kill the stream on the Eric Hunley channel. Please click the link in the chat. Come on over. Really, we're trying to build this channel up, get monetized. Again, buy Mark a comb. And you can't even buy a comb, folks. So help us buy a comb for Mark and come on over to America's Untold Stories and watch the rest.